Joining me now to talk about this, Sarah Fisher, CNN senior media analyst and senior media analyst at Axios, Joel Rubin, Democratic strategist and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, and Dustin Olson, pollster and managing partner at American Pulse Research and Polling. All right, President Trump actually has a theory of his own that he posted on social media where he basically says, look, Trump wasn't on the ballot and Shutdown were the two reasons that Republicans lost elections tonight. And then it says, according to pollsters, which is not the usual, frankly, social media posts we see from him. Dustin, can you talk about what you see? I mean, you are a pollster. And yes, it was a conversation last night about Democratic coalitions, but it also seemed to be a question about whether Trump's coalition of 2024 was a one-time thing.
Yeah, well, the New York City mayor's race I thought was the most interesting. It's also the race that we've done the most public polling as well as internal polling on. And it's definitely, I would call it a mixed bag for Democrats. Obviously, it's a huge win. I think Mamdani's speech was ambitious. And I think he'll be, if he does half the things, be transformative. And that's probably, for some Democrats within the party, they're not going to be excited about that. We're watching the transformation of that party. One of the things that's interesting we saw in our polling is that people who lived in and around the city on 9/11, they were going for Cuomo. So that's definitely, there's a generational divide, and you can see that playing out. Also, you know, the policies that were unpopular that Mamdani has proposed and promoted, defund the police, refusing to denounce globalized intifada. These were not popular with New Yorkers as well. So there's a little bit of, I think they don't necessarily agree with him on all policies, but they wanted to see some change.
Can I ask you about the New Jersey question, though? Just the sense that you've had counties, Trump had major swings with Latino voters. And, you know, this isn't Arizona. This isn't Texas. These are guys that the Republicans were like, look, this kind of thing puts New Jersey in play. Was that ever true?
I think it's true if Donald Trump's on the ballot. Also, an off-year election following a presidential year, you have the party that didn't win the White House, you know, things swing towards that
So no
party.
warning signs there.
So there is, but also in 21, we saw a similar coalition, you know, more affluent voters who have moved away from Trump Republicans, and you've had higher education folks moving away from Trump Republicans. They voted for Ciattarelli last time as well. So there's been a bit of a demographic difference between these different kinds of elections.
Well, this was probably, the group chat is back. I wanted to talk about this because I think past government shutdowns, the ones I covered back 2012, 2014, there was a sense of like, I don't know, the National Mall might not get mowed. Like it felt very kind of low stakes. And this is not playing out that way. And I'm wondering, Dustin, why you think that is, why people are more acutely feeling it in a way that Republicans are not able to just like pin the blame on someone and make headway.
Well, they don't control the media for one reason. You know, it's just whatever the narrative is in the media. We watch polling, we do the information flow, and if the coverage is one way, that's what people are going to believe. That being said, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, eating is pretty high on that list. So when it gets to that level, then people they're not going to care. They just want something to get done, and I think that we're watching that happen right now. And also, I do think that the elections yesterday gave Democrats one of the best headlines that they've had for some time. We've had this, you know, parade of a lot of Trump wins, and now Democrats have a real win, and that hopefully gives everybody a reason to get together and make this happen.
Do you think when he goes to the Hill it means something, or is he going to the Hill just to say, hey, let's start doing some procedural filibuster talk?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's unfair to say that Trump or the Republicans are being cruel. I can tell you nobody wanted it to get to this point. And part of the problem is, you know, in past shutdowns like the Obama administration and others, they would try to make people feel it really quick. The Trump administration, honestly, by making sure the military are paid and making sure that we're now getting partial on the food stamps, they've kind of elongated this. And because they're trying not to have people feel it so much, I think it probably was a strategic mistake.
Yeah, and we've heard some criticism that they're picking winners and losers about like who's going to suffer through the shutdown.
Based on how much money is available.
Yeah, exactly. I heard Spanberger talking about the pragmatism, and she's also, like Cheryl, they're like, national security types, right? They have the kind of resume that for a long time Democrats really felt was necessary to combat kind of Republican perceived strength on national security, on crime. If it's a model, Dustin, what takeaways do you see that Republicans could be concerned about?
Well, you have Mamdani winning in New York City, then you have these two candidates winning in these two blue states.
As governors, right? Where they're going to have a big platform.
So they're more important ultimately, but still you have both sides of the party having some wins in these. So for Virginia, this one thing we have to remember is that in off-year elections following a presidential year, the party out of power always does better. And in Virginia in particular, before yesterday, 11 of the last 12 governor's races went against the person in the White House. Now it's 12 out of 13. So this is just a typical, the pattern that happens. Now, one thing I would say that is the intensity there, though, is the House of Delegates is, I think it looks like it's going to be about 64 out of the 100. So that is actually, there's a level of intensity. The government shutdown going this long, I think, had a lot of that. There's a non-zero chance that a lot of those government workers who were not working were part of the get out the vote operations for the Democrats. Also, do
they need that? Like, if you're mad at the government because you've been laid off and aren't paying, you don't need someone to knock on your door.
No, operations do make a difference, but the energy also makes a difference. Something that I don't think anybody's talked about, but a year ago, Republicans did something that was kind of unheard of. They outsourced their get out the vote operations to Turning Point USA. And the guy who's in charge of that was assassinated 2 months ago. That had an operational actual impact on these elections because obviously they're dealing with some stuff. So that, there are operational impacts, and I think that.
But meaning there's not an infrastructure that just falls in place because once you've outsourced it. Do you, Dustin, see this as being about tariffs, or is it, like every Supreme Court thing with him, kind of a test of what is executive power? How much can a president do on his own?
I imagine the Supreme Court is looking at it as a test of executive power. I think for a lot of people, they view it as, this is foreign policy. And I have to say, I'm personally a Republican. Our firm does polling for both sides. But whether it's a Democrat president or a Republican president, I want them to be able to do this. And I don't, I think it'll be damaging if the Supreme Court takes that away. In our polling, though, it's interesting. A plurality of Americans actually told us that 47% that they support his use of the tariffs strategically in negotiations.
As the negotiation. Okay, you guys, Sarah and Joel, I want you to stay with me. Dustin, thank you so much for being here, bringing your expertise. I appreciate it. Okay.